Good evening, folks. Welcome to another episode of Shooting Straight, Living Life in Truth. Give me just a second to adjust this camera. I forgot to get the proper focal length. Sorry about that, folks. My mind's been all over the place trying to get stuff ready for this evening. But anyway, thank you for joining me this evening. And I just wanted to take a moment to let you know what we're going to be talking about. I'm Charles, your host for the evening. And what we're going to be talking about is the pseudopsychology of the Sigma male. And I refer to it that way for a specific reason, and we'll get into that in just a moment. But for now, let's go ahead and have a word from our sponsor.
Are you twisted enough for Twisted Minds escape rooms?
All right.
Then check us out at twistedminds.com and book an adventure today. You can
choose.
choose between Camp Calico or the mysteries of Vanished. How about travel back in time to 1840s California and visit Digger's General Store? Or get ready, coming late spring, early summer 2021, a little bit of mayhem at Twisted Minds Escape Rooms in Palm Coast. Check us out at twistedminds.com or give us a call at 888-92-TWIST. We'll be waiting.
Welcome back, folks. Hey, if you ever get down into Palm Coast, make sure to take a moment to check out Twisted Minds Escape Rooms. They are, if not the best, they are one of the best in the state of Florida. And I would go so far as to say they are the best in Northeast Florida when it comes to escape rooms. The staff there is incredible. They're friendly. They add to the experience of the game, make sure that you have a great time. And they put a lot of thought into each of the games. You guys will thoroughly enjoy it if you take the opportunity to take advantage of one of those games. So I highly encourage you to do so. Now give me just a moment. I need to, this camera focal point angle is bugging me. Hang on. That's a little better. Let's get it in a little tighter. There we go. All right, I can live with that. Sorry about that, folks. I'm a little picky when it comes to the way things look for y'all. So if there's ever anything that you guys don't like or you want to see change, just let me know, and I will be happy to try and make that change for you. Yeah, something's looking off this week, but we'll figure that out later. Anyway, on with our discussion. The Sigma male. That is something that is interesting to me because it's actually a part of what I call pseudopsychology. In other words, it's not something that is actually recognized by the psychology field. And in fact, its origins actually stem from the same place that the alpha and beta concept came from. And essentially the history behind that, and I forget what the exact study is and who conducted it, but it'd be super easy to look that up and find out. But they did a study one time on large animals like lions, tigers, wolves, bears, and gorillas and whatnot. And the term alpha male came about as a result of those studies. Now, the psychology field never actually applied that to human beings because they recognize that human beings are so complicated in their overall psychology that even with all of the personality tests and things that they have available for evaluating that kind of stuff, none of them will ever say that any particular individual will ever fit into any one particular mold completely. And if you notice their terminology, they always refer to a sort of like tendency or propensity for a particular personality type. And that's because really our personalities are a conglomeration of various aspects, life experiences, et cetera, et cetera. It gets really complicated, and that's why they don't put things into little boxes like that in actual psychology. If you guys have never actually looked into psychology or looked at those types of things, I highly encourage you to do so because it's actually a pretty fascinating field. And it's pretty interesting the things that you can notice about people and the understanding that you can develop about other people just from having some knowledge of psychology without even being quote unquote an expert. But yeah, I highly recommend it, but at the same time also understand that the the topic that I'm speaking of with Sigma males is in that sociological construct environment, not actually in the psychology field. So, and that's why I wanted to kind of go over this, and you'll understand more the more I get into this and start talking about the Sigma male qualities. And the reason that I say that is because I'm also going to relate my life experiences to the characteristics that they say are Sigma male. But as I go through these, you can also see where, yes, I may have a propensity for falling into this category, but at the same time, again, we're so complex that you can't fit me into a box, just like you can't fit you into a box. You are you, I am me. We are as individual as our fingerprints. So I want you to keep that in mind as we go through all of this. But before I get into the first characteristic of a Sigma male, I again want to pull this camera in just a little bit closer. Sorry folks, it's been a heck of a day. I've had a lot going on today. We were kind of scrambling the last couple of hours to get everything set up, so my apologies for that. We will make sure that doesn't happen in the future. But hey, that's live broadcasting for you. Nothing ever goes perfect. So let's go ahead and get into those character traits. And the first one that I want to discuss is the fact that Sigma males resemble that of an introverted alpha male. They're strong, confident, silent, and yet social when necessary. Now, when I think about that in relationship to myself, it's always interesting because while I've respected leadership and always preferred that someone else be in the leadership role, I was quite content to sit back and just observe and learn. Didn't necessarily mean I agreed with everything, didn't necessarily mean that I followed everything. But it's interesting because the Sigma male and the alpha male, they both have a high level of charisma, but it's different. And if you think of that in terms of the introvert versus the extrovert, you got your alpha male who is socially centered and is a great conversationalist, et cetera, et cetera. You know what an alpha male is. You've seen them before. The Sigma male, on the other hand, is more introverted. So they don't tend to talk as much. They don't tend to have as much of a flamboyant type charisma. Their charisma comes more from the fact that they are introverted, that they have that silence and that strength of character that exudes this air of mystery to them. And that's what adds to the Sigma's charisma. So with that, let's talk about the second trait here. The Sigma values freedom, independence, and solitary activities. They don't like being put in a box. Now, remember what I said when I introduced this topic? Saying that somebody is alpha, saying that somebody is beta, saying somebody is gamma or omega or zeta or sigma, that's putting people in boxes. I don't like that. So yeah, just to give you an idea, I'm not really fond of the whole concept, which is kind of strange considering the fact that I'm doing this episode on the Sigma male. But when it came out, I thought it was interesting because for the first time in my life, and I'm now basically a half century old, and that sounds really, really weird to say, because it seems like just yesterday I was only 20 and 30. Uh, but yeah, time flies, guys. So value and treasure every moment that you have, and be sure to explore the people around you. In the previous episodes, I referred to it as like seeing the trees or seeing the forest but not seeing the trees. Go into those woods and explore those trees and find out the different characteristics and the things that make people who they are, because it's in doing those kind of things in which you will enrich your life in ways that you can't even imagine. Um, now, that's not saying you're always going to agree with somebody. That's not saying that you're always going to disagree with somebody, you know. But it opens you up to new perspectives, new aspects of life that you won't get any other way. So, really, to live life in truth and live it to its fullest, you have to see the forest and the trees to truly appreciate the people that are around you. So, with that, let's discuss the next character trait of a Sigma male. They, t- they tend to be elusive and mysterious, strong, silent type of a way. Now, they tend to be observant from the corner without speaking a lot. Now, you'll see this a lot with Sigma males, and specifically myself as well. Just over life, over my lifetime, with my experiences, with social events, and just in general life experience. Not, anything significant, not anything, major on the positive or the negative side, just daily life in general. Um, I have personally come to find that sitting back and observing my environment and observing who is around me and looking at the way they interact with people, their body language, their vocal tones, their facial expressions, the nonverbal communication type stuff, in addition to the verbal communication, reveals a lot about people. Um, and you can get a feel for who someone is just by observing and watching those things. And generally speaking, within about 5 minutes, I can generally tell whether or not you're going to be the kind of person that I'm either going to allow into my inner circle at some point, or let you come a little closer than an acquaintance, but not into my inner circle, or whether you're just going to stay out in the acquaintance field. And a lot of that has to do with, of course, my filters in relation to my life and in my life experiences. But nevertheless, when you do see me at a social event, I am that one sitting off in a corner of a room for a couple of reasons. One, having been in the military, my mind always goes to a strategic format, and keeping myself out of positions where I could potentially end up in trouble or end up hurt. So I like to have my back to the wall anyway, just because it's easier to observe everything that's going on around me in the environment and stay on top of it mentally. Uh, but at the same time, and we'll get into this a little bit more later probably, but again, small talk isn't something that I personally enjoy. Because when I have conversations, I like them to be meaningful. And it's largely in part because I tend to be a deep thinker. Um, but it just it, uh, it just contributes to me being observant and quiet, sitting off in the corner watching things. Because, as you can see now, we like to live outside the social hierarchy structures and prefer the critical thinking. And we don't like getting roped into. Bring that back up for me, real quick. And we don't like getting roped into social norms and prefer the outside perspective of things. Go ahead and take it down. And what I mean by that is, again, that when you're sitting on the fringes of society, like most Sigma males will do, it gives us an outside perspective. We get to see what one side's doing, we get to see what the other side is doing, we get to see what this person over here is doing, what that person over there is doing. And when we watch and observe all of this, we can actually see the conglomeration of the whole. In other words, we see what the individual trees are doing, but at the same time, we also see what the forest is doing. And in doing so, we're able to generate a bit of a strategy, so to speak, for how to deal with particular situations and things. And generally speaking, it doesn't always line up with the social norms. All right. Like, at the risk of getting off into a touchy subject, in episode 2, I discussed my great grandmother and my grandmother. And I put out that they ended up setting the definition for me as to what a strong woman is. Now, what I see as a strong woman isn't necessarily the same thing that society sees as a strong woman. And the reason that I say that is because in today's society, a strong woman, a lot of times, and I'm not saying this is true of everyone, but a lot of times a strong woman has taken on male type characteristics in their personalities. And for me personally, and I know a lot of guys like myself, we don't really find that kind of thing attractive, because we're tending to look more for someone. I know you guys probably won't like this, but more on the submissive side, more on the side of, and when I say submissive, I'm, I can hear, I already hear it right now.
How dare you!
Now, when I say submissive, what I mean by submissive isn't so much, yes, a master. I'm not talking about that. What I'm talking about is a strong woman who has her own life, has her own career, is able to provide for herself, and if she has children, able to do that for her children as well. But at the same time, when she comes across a man who strikes her interest, she knows how to turn that masculinity off and says, you know what? I see where you're headed. I'm wanting to go to the same place. Let me help you get there. In that sense, and it kind of brings me back to a biblical scripture, and I'm not going to sit here and quote it to you, but the generalized principle is that one can accomplish 1,000 things, but two can accomplish 10,000 things. So when you have teamwork and you have two people working on one thing and trying to achieve one goal, they can accomplish 10 times as much. And so when I'm saying a strong woman, in my mind, this is the kind of woman that I'm talking about. She's not going to take guff off of anybody, but she knows how to flip that switch to bring back her femininity when it comes to the man that she loves. And I know that that is completely outside the boundaries of what society thinks is a strong woman these days. But that's my definition of a strong woman. And I bring that up only as an example of how a Sigma male might think when they're on the outside and they're seeing an outside perspective and can see all the different dynamics of a particular situation or a particular subject and then formulate their own idea about it. And that's what you're looking at when you're looking at the Sigma male. Pardon me. So the next point I want to bring up about the Sigma male is that they often are viewed as being brooding or deep thinkers. Their critical deep thinking often leaves them in solitary silence. So many times I could be sitting in a group of people And we could all be participating in a social activity, whether that be watching a movie in the living room or hanging out at the beach or going to Adventure Island or hanging out at a roller rink or an ice skating rink or DMB or going to Top Golf or any of these other places that people like to go to for social activities and events, to include church too. But a lot of times I can be sitting there silent and my mind will be going 100 miles an hour thinking about a particular situation and all the contributing aspects and things that go into creating that situation, and then look and trying to look at what the consequences of that situation and the end results and the different possibilities of those end results could create down the road in the future. And it's I could just be sitting there thinking about these things, and inevitably someone will look over at me and go, "Hey, are you okay?" And it's it's part of that silent, mysterious nature of a Sigma male that generates that kind of stuff. But and that's just some insight into my mind, into the mind of a Sigma male. So, and that's one of the reasons why the solitary activities are so refreshing and so rejuvenating for us, because even if it's just sitting out on my back patio, listening to the birds out in the trees chirp and watching my dog walk around the backyard and hearing the sounds of traffic on the interstate a couple of miles away, I find that very rejuvenating. And in fact, that's one of the reasons why I like to grill and why I've actually gotten to be so good at it. And no, I'm not bragging. It's not bragging when you're telling the truth. And you can just ask any of my friends that have had any of my burgers, any of my steaks, any of my pork chops, any of the chicken that I've ever grilled up for them, and they'll tell you, the man knows how to grill. All right, so it ain't bragging if it's true. Just saying. All right. So it's just one of those things, and I enjoy it because many times when I'm doing it, I'm actually by myself. And sometimes my brain will be doing that 1,000 mile an hour thing, breaking down a scenario, while at other times it's just being quiet and only occasionally popping in a thought about what I'm doing with the grill, or an occasional thought about, oh, that bird's chirp was rather pretty. And then that might end up leading into, well, that's interesting because it's kind of like fulfilling the alto portion of this little montage of music that's going on with these guys over here that are doing a tenor thing or soprano thing. It just, again, I'm just giving you examples of what these quote characteristics are. Not every Sigma male is the same, so I'm just trying to give you a general understanding of things to consider when you deal with a Sigma male. So let's with the next one, the next characteristic is we'll see that they detest small talk and prefer meaningful conversation. Talking about trivial things doesn't stimulate the mentality, them mentally or personal growth. Now, just in the last couple of points, I think you can see where this comes in, because if my mind is generating these kind of thoughts and having these kind of thought processes about everyday life and just everyday situations and big picture stuff, small picture stuff, if my brain is acting like that on a regular basis, then why would I have any interest in going, nice weather today, right? Come on, folks. If I'm going to have a conversation with you, I want it to mean something. I want to get something out of it, and I want you to get something out of it, because that's the only way that we as individuals are going to grow. It's also the only way that when there are divides, that those divides get bridged and get healed. You know, too often, so many times, I've seen scenarios where people could be saying the exact same thing and they don't even realize it, but they're upset and they're in this argument over this topic where I just want to sometimes look at them and go, hey, hey, you guys are saying the same thing. You're just coming at it from different angles, you know? And that's one of the reasons why I and Sigma males love that third person perspective on situations, that outside fringe perspective, because we can see where we can generate more efficiency, where we can generate more peace, where we can generate a better society around us and a better environment around us, where everybody can grow. Because our growth is important to us, because we're always trying to grow, we're always trying to get better, we're always trying to learn more things, because that mental stimulation just is a serious motivator for us. Just like, you know, the solitary activities can act as a rejuvenating factor for us, a good stimulating conversation with someone can do the same thing. Now, at the same time, it's interesting because a Sigma male can also see and feel others as being an energy drain on them, which is part of the reason why the solitary activities and the isolation is so important to them, because they need that time to rejuvenate, to rebuild that energy, which is also why a strong woman can be so important in their lives. But that's a whole nother topic. So let's go ahead and discuss this next character trait. They tend to embrace the unknowns and opt for fluidity and growth through experience. They adapt well to current situations and evaluate them critically for growth. So, Sigmas and myself in general understand and know that life is a fluid thing. There's nothing that's really truly set in stone. The only thing that's actually set in stone is the past, which is one of the reasons why we look to the future, because the future is where we have the flexibility and the freedom and the liberty to be able to construct the future that we want for ourselves. Whether that be a successful businessman making 6+ figures a year, or someone who's just content with making sure that they have a roof over their head, clothes on their back, food's in their belly, and the ability to travel and go camping or go fishing or go bowling or go play pool or just sit quietly somewhere in like a living room or a bedroom and read a book, or just watch some sort of documentary or some sort of educational video, because we're always looking to try and improve, even when we're not really doing anything, or so it would appear. But yeah, it's just, do me a favor, bring that back up real quick, because I kind of went off on a rabbit trail on that one. There we go. Yeah, the fluidity and critical thinking and growth in the current situation. So yeah, I'll use this as an example now, but it actually really more applies to the last character trait. But just to give an example, when I was in, well, okay, I just thought of a different one. When I was in the military, my squad leader essentially decided to go hands off when it came to the leadership, and essentially put the whole ball of wax into my hands. Now, you can imagine, as a Sigma male, considering the fact that we've kind of sort of discussed the fact that we don't really like being in leadership roles. But I was put in this situation where I had to prepare a quick reactionary team, which is basically like a squad to a company sized element, or squad to a platoon sized element that would go out ahead of the quick reactionary force to help establish some things, get some things set up to prepare for the quick reactionary force to come up. And at the time I was a medic, so a lot of what I had to do was make sure that they were medically deployable. In other words, they had all their shots, their eyeglasses were the right prescription. If they needed an inhaler for something, they had their inhalers. They had their inserts for their protective mask, their NBC protective mask. We get certain types of blood work done. We do basically an overall general physical, but then take it a couple of steps farther just to make sure that they were medically deployable and didn't have anything that would preclude them from being able to do the job. But then I was also tasked with prepping the quick reactionary force, which was an entire company of people. Now that company, when you added in all the augmentees, in other words, the people from other units that would come in to assist that unit with their mission, we're talking about over 700 people that I had to do all these things for. Then throw on top of it, we also had an equipment inspection coming up in preparation for getting ready to go on a field training exercise with the rest of my unit. So I was having to do and turn around and prepare my squad for that field training exercise. So I had four huge projects lumped onto me at one time. And I just looked at my squad leader and I looked at him and I asked him quite simply and quite plainly, what do you think I am, a miracle worker? I mean, no disrespect, Sergeant, but what do you think I am, a miracle worker? Nobody's had this done in decades here. But nevertheless, I said, if that's my mission, though, I will set out to make it happen. So then I looked at the scenario and I looked at the situation all around, and long story short, I ended up getting the quick reactionary team medically deployable. I had the quick reactionary force medically deployable. And when I say medically deployable, I mean 100% across the board. So in a matter of 2 weeks, I had over 700 people medically deployable, and some of those people were over 2 hours away. So while I was making a drive to go 2 hours to take care of these folks that were somewhere else to make sure that they were medically deployable, the rest of my squad I had divided up doing particular tasks back at our home base so that other people were getting things done at the same time I was getting that done. And long story short, they got 100% medically deployable. We got through the inspection with only 2 dings in the whole squad. And those dings were something that were easily repaired. So we got that fixed within a matter of minutes, and we were set to go with 100% ready for that field training exercise. And then when we went out to the field training exercise, I ended up setting 4 records during that training exercise that went up Army-wide. To my knowledge, 2 of them still exist today. But I say all that to say this. We know that life is going to throw obstacles at us. It's just going to happen. And in order to deal with them, you have to remain fluid. You have to remain adaptable. And that's one of the big characteristic traits of a Sigma male that they will pick up very early and be able to adapt to those things and do things. Like, for example, you know, when growing up, like back in high school, right? In my day, we had surfers, rednecks, goth, and 1 or 2 other groups that were pretty predominant in my high school and in the Jacksonville area in general. Because at the time, I was going to Ed White Senior High. But I was that person that I could intermingle with all of those groups. Pardon me. I get along with all of those groups. I would hang out with all of these groups. And I would learn things and gain things from those groups, and they would learn and gain some things from me too in the process. But when you got right down to the brass tacks of it, I was never actually a part of those groups, even though we hung out all the time. And again, that goes in to show the flexibility and the adaptability of a Sigma male, because, and one of the reasons why they also like their solitary activities so much. And it's because we can interact like that, but in the process of doing it, we kind of get drained energy wise. So then once we've had those kind of activities, we like our solitary environment to be able to recharge, and then we can do it again the next day. So let me go ahead and move on, because I don't want to kill too much time on any one particular character trait, because that'd be easy to do. I could sit here for days talking about this, but they dislike trivial rules, constraints that they find limiting or controlling, practical thinkers, and concerned with efficiency and energy. In other words, if you were to find a Sigma male in a employment type environment, they can be a follower, they can be a part of the team, even though they work better by themselves, and they do their best work when they're by themselves. But again, they can still work in the team to accomplish things that they can't accomplish by themselves. But in the end, if they're being used efficiently, effectively, and productively, they have no problem following an alpha male. At the same time, that's about as far as their beta characteristics go. I mean, there are some others that are mixed in there too, and whatnot, but in that environment, that's what we're looking at. We're looking at somebody that can work really well by themselves, but at the same time still be a follower and still accomplish some great things if they're being used effectively, efficiently, and productively. Because that's one of the things that we as Sigma males, we just don't like. We like the efficiency. It's like, for example, these live streams, right? I'll be honest, it grates against my bones when something doesn't work right. And my producer can tell you. And people that I've done photo shoots with can tell you. It does grate against my bones pretty hard. But those same people will also tell you that that I have a pretty mild temperament. In other words, it's pretty evened out. Yeah, I get upset about it, but at the same time, I'm also thinking, okay, how can I fix this and go on with the mission? Because I don't need this to stop this. We just need to figure out what caused it and fix it and move on and keep going. And my producer will tell you, pretty much today, that's kind of how things went. My first broadcast, it was a little bit similar to that. The second broadcast that we did, yeah, we had some foul ups with Facebook and things didn't go right, and we ended up getting off on a late start. Now, me as a Sigma male with that Sigma male mentality and having 18 years in the Army, Lord have mercy, the last thing this man wants to be is late. I live on the philosophy that 15 minutes early is on time. Anything after that, you're late. And that's just how I work, because I would rather show up 15 minutes early according to society, because if I show up and I find out, oh, something's wrong, now I got 15 minutes to fix it. And with the way my brain works, that's exactly what's happening. Okay, what's wrong? How can I fix it? Let's make it happen. And again, my producer can tell you that's how I think, because there's been many a times where we've actually been shooting some short film type work and that kind of stuff comes up. And initially I'll be like, what? I'll be like,
excuse me.
and then I'll be go, okay, so what caused the problem? All right, now that we've got an idea of what caused the problem, let's make this happen. All right, and this is how we're going to do it. And my producer will tell you, I'm not sitting here barking orders. I'm going, what's the issue? Okay, well, we can fix it this way, or we can fix it this way. Do you have any ideas on how we can fix this? And inevitably, when somebody throws an idea at me, sometimes I accept it, sometimes I don't. But if it's a really good idea and I think it's going to be the most efficient and effective way to solve the problem, guess what? That's what we do. And my producer will back that up. So I'm just letting you guys know, and I'm letting you know there are people who can back this up about me, because that's what this show is all about. Shooting straight, living life in truth. I'm not going to sit here and throw, and blow smoke in your face over this stuff. I'm going to be honest with you, because that's just how I am. I'm straight to the point. Let's go on to the next one. So we tend to be adventurous, travel light when we travel, and because they are practical and adventurous, they will focus on necessities. So in other words, and this one always cracks me up. And a lot of males are actually this way in comparison to you ladies. Now, I'm not getting sexist about it, because you guys know a great portion of you, when you go on trips, you pack the entire closet. At least it seems that way to us guys. But you got to have a shoe for this event. You got to have shoes for that event. You got to have shoes for this event. You got to have a dress to go with those shoes. And then you got to have the purse to go with the dress that goes with the shoes. And you get the picture. Next thing you know, oh, yeah, and let's not forget hair and makeup, guys. All right. Anyway, but the next thing you know, you got this lady, and we're going on a weekend trip that's like a 6-hour drive. And the entire trunk is full with just her baggage. I mean, really?
How dare you?
Now, for me, I'm thinking, okay, we're going on a weekend trip. We're going to be gone for 3 days, basically 3 nights. So the first day, the shirt that I'll be wearing on my back, the pants or shorts that I'm wearing, and the shoes and the socks that I'm going to be wearing, that's going to get me through the first day. So guess what? I only need to pack 2 days worth of clothes. That's it. That's all I need. Okay? That's all I need. Now, of course, if during that time we're going to have a formal dinner with someone, then of course I'll take an extra change of clothes to compensate and be dressed appropriately for that event. But otherwise, I'm taking 2 days worth of clothes. That means 2 shirts, 2 pairs of socks, and probably wearing the same shoes for the whole weekend. Now, of course, you've got your toiletries and stuff like that, but you know what? That fits really nicely in the small outside pocket of my suitcase, which, mind you, is only about yay big and about yay tall. Okay? Well, you can't see it in the camera, but anyway, it's a small suitcase. That's my weekend to 1 week trip. Now, let's say I decide that I'm going to go out there and put a little extra effort out and get my passport and put in a little bit more extra effort to get up enough money to fly back to Madeira, which is where my family is from, so that I can take pictures of the island and stuff like that. Well, guess what? I'm probably going to sit there and think about that, and going to think, you know what? I'm going to need at least 2 weeks to hit all the places that I'm going to want to go. And all the places that I'm going to want to go aren't going to be covered by the tours, because tourists don't go there. Now, I will go to some of those tourist places just so I can get a picture and say, see, I've been there. But the rest of the time, I'm going to be looking at traveling those mountain paths and hiking and checking out the mountaintops and going out to Porto Muniz, seeing relatives, going out to Santo Antonio and a couple of these other places that most of the travelers don't go. So in the process of doing all that, I'm going to be thinking, okay, I'm going to be there for 2 weeks. I'm going to call ahead and find out, does the hotel have a laundry room where I can do laundry? If they do, then guess what? I'm packing for 1 week. Because on that Saturday evening, I'm going to do laundry so that come Sunday, I can start the second week with the first week's clothes. And then when it comes time for me to get on the airplane, I'm going to do a load of laundry the day before so that when I come home, I got nothing but clean clothes and I can turn around and unpack it and put it right into the dresser. That's how a Sigma male thinks. Efficiency. Keep it simple. Keep it easy. Focus on the needs, not the wants. All right. But hey, that's just me. That's how I can sit there and go on an international trip with one suitcase. Now, of course, nowadays, because of my camera gear and whatnot, I'm probably going to have one suitcase and a backpack. And the backpack's going to have all my camera gear in it. Everything that I think I'm going to need. And what doesn't fit in that backpack is probably going to get thrown in the suitcase because I got some extra space because I only packed for 1 week. So here we go. Now, if that hotel, or there's no way for me, like say, my relatives aren't necessarily going to be available and aren't willing to let me come into their home and use their washer and dryer, which I would never ask them to do that, but if they offered, I wouldn't turn it down. But if the hotel didn't have a washer and dryer, then okay, I'm going to take a slightly bigger suitcase and pack 2 weeks worth of clothes so that I don't have to worry about, having to wash stuff and use dirty clothes and whatnot. But hey, it is what it is. So that's a Sigma being simple and thinking about the needs and being efficient. So let's go on to the next one. And how are we doing on time? 13. Okay. They avoid typical tourist attractions and seek out less traveled experiences in their travels. Go ahead and bring that back up real quick. They prefer to see things in their natural state for exploration and personal growth. That's kind of what I mentioned just then when I was talking about going back to Madeira. Things in their natural state, in their natural habitats with the natural ecosystem. There's so much that we can learn from those things. And, even in some instances, you can actually learn things that can help you with your personal growth. So it's just one of those things. And it also goes along with the whole desire for solitary activities. We don't like being in crowds. For me, I come by that naturally, but at the same time, again, having spent 18 years in the military, it kind of heightens that aspect of my personality, which in a lot of ways can be a negative, but not necessarily a negative. I mean, it's a very positive thing for myself and my personal growth and whatnot. But at the same time, people also, because of that solitary aspect of my life and of a Sigma's life, sometimes they don't understand us. Sometimes they can misinterpret what we say. And as we all know, misinterpretations, misunderstandings always lead to issues. And quite frankly, we're not ones for drama. We like the peace. We like the peace. That's why we go into solitary activities and like to go out into the woods and go places where other tourists don't go. So let's go ahead and move on to the next one, because I want to make sure I leave you guys with enough time for Q&A at the end of this. Because they operate outside the social structure, they are adaptable. Rarely associated with a clique. Okay, we talked about that one earlier when I brought up my time in high school, where I could insert myself and hang out with all these different groups, but never really actually be a part of it. That's pretty much what that was talking about. So let's go to the next one. So we can lead and prefer to remain under the radar as leadership is constraining to them. Now, they will step up in the absence of leadership. I missed that last part, sorry. They will step up in the absence of leadership, but will gladly give it up. All right. You can go ahead and take that down now. Now, this is the example that I had referred to earlier without actually getting into it. Another situation in my military career, and this is one of those things that a lot of people don't understand about me and don't understand about Sigma males. We can lead. We are alphas in a sense, but we're introverted. So, I mean, as much as we are alphas, we're not alphas. So we have the ability to lead. We just don't like to. We don't want to. And the reason for that isn't because we want to shirk responsibility, but we don't like being the focus of attention. We have a tendency to feel that if we are in a leadership position, then we get tied down. We lose an element of our freedom. We lose an element of that liberty, that independence, and become tied to a group of people or a situation that doesn't allow us to be flexible and go where we need to go. And it limits our ability to get in those solitary activities and get alone, because when you end up in a leadership position, if you've never been in one before, there's not a moment of a day that somebody isn't coming to you and asking you a question, asking for advice, asking for direction, asking for help on something. So inevitably, if you're not there, things don't go right. So in that aspect, we don't like being leaders. We don't want to be leaders. And the irony behind that is people who don't want to be leaders and aren't seeking that out and aren't seeking to be in a position that puts them as the center of attention are usually the ones who make the best leaders. Because remember earlier I made the statement that we lead differently than alphas. We don't demand things. We tend to lead by example. In other words, as the military used to say, we lead from the front. And as Colonel Hal Moore said, and if you guys have never seen the movie We Were Soldiers, it will put this into context for you a little bit more. But one of the things that Colonel Hal Moore told his troops when they were being deployed to Vietnam, before they even left the United States, and as they were in formation preparing to get on the buses to go to the airport to go to Vietnam, he told them straight up, my boots will be the first ones on the ground, and my boots will be the last ones to leave the ground. In other words, I'm not going to be barking orders at you. I'm going to be the first one there. I'm going to be in the trenches with you. I'm going to be fighting this battle right alongside you. And I tell you what, when you're in the military and one of your leaders says something like that to you, it triggers something in you that, in all honesty, makes you fight harder, makes you fight even more vigilant, makes you even more on top of your game, and makes you want to do better for them. And that is really what a Sigma male is striving for when they are in leadership. But at the same time, they will gladly give it up. And I want to give this quick example real quick, and then I'll wrap this up and we'll open it up for questions. But when I was in the military, there was a young private in my squad. And over time, as I was in that unit, I started noticing more and more and more and more and more and more that leadership was against him. And what I mean by that was every time I turned around, leadership was doing something that would hinder him, that was threatening to him. And at one point it got to the point where they were talking about dishonorably discharging him from the military for failure to what do they call it? Failure to conform. Because conformance is a huge thing in the military. It's kind of like the foundation for a lot of things. that are absolutely necessary in the military. But they were talking about booting him out for that, and he was there with his wife. And the more and more I looked at him, the more I looked at the situation from different angles, from the leadership's perspective, then watching him in his daily duties and visiting his house and hanging out with him, which it opened up a lot of things to me as an observer rather than a participant in the situation, that I started realizing, wait a minute, this guy is showing some signs of severe abuse in his personality characteristics and his traits, in the way he thinks and the way he operates and the way he does things. Because one minute he would do a job and it would be above standard, but generally speaking, his performance was below standard. And that was the reason that the leadership was looking at booting him out. But I sat there and I thought about this for a second. When I saw those traits, I sat down with him one day and I said, hey, Private so-and-so. I said, I've noticed some things about you and about your daily life and the way you interact and relate with people. And I'm going to ask you a very personal question. Now, I want you to understand that I'm taking rank out of this picture right now. We are men, one man talking to another. And I want you to be sincerely honest with me here, because I've had some experiences in my life, and I related to him how I had been physically abused, mentally abused, and sexually abused and neglected when I was younger. And I recognized the signs and symptoms of those things in him. And then I asked him point blank, were you abused as a child or before you entered the military? And when he said yes, that's all I needed to know. At that point, I stepped into the situation and I went to the leadership, and I had talked to him. I said, look, if I can work it out with leadership to where we can get you into see a therapist where you can talk these things out and work through these things, would you be willing to do that? And he said, absolutely. So at that point, I turned around and I went to the leadership and I said, look, guys, this is what you're dealing with. He's not a substandard soldier. You guys know as well as I do, when you go through leadership training, they tell you there's no such thing as a bad soldier. There's only bad leaders. Well, here's what's happening with this guy. Now, I challenge you, and I know you guys are frustrated with him and everything, but here's what I'm going to offer you. I'm going to offer that you let me have sole authority, sole control over this particular individual when it comes to rank, taskings, etc., 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 and assignments. Anything that has to go, anything that needs to go to him comes to me first. If he needs something, he comes to me first. Let me take that role with him. In other words, let me take the leadership role with this guy. And at the same time, he has already agreed that he will go see a therapist and work some of these issues out. Now, I ask that you give me 4 months, just 4 months, to work with him. And if I can't get him to a performance status of above standard, then I will relinquish my role as the leader and you guys can do whatever you want. Well, within 3 months, this soldier was performing above standards. And not just performing above standards, but literally became one of the best soldiers we had in the platoon in just 3 months. And it was just simply because someone saw something and stepped in and took a leadership role. And it took a Sigma male, me, to see it. Again, living out on the fringes of societal structure and being able to observe things from a third person perspective can open up your sights to things that you wouldn't normally see. And it's absolutely an outstanding and incredible place to be. Now, with that said, I am out of time, so I want to open this up for a question and answer period. I'm being told I'm completely out of time. So, but anyway, let's just open it up for a couple of minutes. Do we have anybody that's online right now watching? No? Okay. Well, in that case, let's go ahead and take that down. We'll close out this broadcast. Guys, I'm just going to leave this here because I know some of you are going to watch it after it's not live anymore, and you're going to watch the replay of it. But do me a favor and please go to YouTube, look me up. I'm FreeMedic30 on YouTube. Do me a favor and like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for me, because it's going to help with the algorithms. It's going to help me get my message out to more people, and it's going to help more people see these videos. And my only purpose for doing these videos is to help bring insights and perspectives from my lifetime to you guys. Not to preach to you, not to tell you how you need to live your life, because that's not what this is about. This is just straight up food for thought to make you think, offer a different perspective, and give you something to mull over. Because my entire intent is to add something to your life to benefit you. And generally, as a result of benefiting one person, hopefully be a benefit to the rest of society at the same time. So please, like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for me, will you? All right, I appreciate it. Thank you very much, and we will see you guys next week. We offline?